Welcome to Slayerfest 98. I'm Ian Carlos Crawford.
And I'm Ashley K. Smalls.
And I'm Brett White.
And I am Nicholas Walker. And today we are here to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yay! Nick, you've gotten an early start on co-hosting duties. This is your second time co-hosting, and you haven't officially been announced yet, but I have bullied you into doing it twice already now.
That is true. You are a bully.
So, yeah, I guess we'll start at the top with just, like, general feelings on the movie. Ashley, I'm most curious to hear what you thought, because I know what me, Nick, and Brett thought already.
Overall, I enjoyed it. It was anxiety inducing because there was like no moment in the movie where I thought someone wasn't going to die.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
And so there was just times when I was like looking down, like I can't see this. I was just very convinced. Like, yeah, I was very much convinced. Like one of the main team members, because we know several people before the movie came out was very much clear about like, I'm done. It's been 10 years. This is it for me. And I mean, damn near everybody had like a life-death experience at one point in the movie. So I was just very convinced, like, oh my God, this is it. This is it, everybody.
Yeah.
So, but I did overall enjoy it. I do, now that I know, what happens, I should probably go see it now, being able to be comfortable and not like having to look away and stuff.
Ashley, that is so fucking funny because, yeah, it really almost was like a horror movie at some point because I was so worried about everyone. And I was positive Drax would die, especially because Dave Bautista has been
so convinced. I was like, I honestly kind of felt like his death was going to be a given. And then James was going to like throw in a big one to like really ruin us.
Yeah.
And like I said, everyone had a life or death experience. When he got shot, and he did that slow motion thing with him.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, this is it. This is it, everybody.
I really was like, this is his death scene. Oh, shit. And then when they're like walking away and he's limping, I was like, oh, all right, he's good. All right.
I thought, and then they shot him again.
Yes.
And I was like, what the fuck? And then especially with Mantis yelling, I was like, this is the death scene.
Yeah.
And then they're going to fucking carry him to the ship with him taking his last breath, Rocket in the other room also dying. I was like, and then I was just thinking Rocket's gonna wake up and like one or two of them are gonna be dead. And I was so distraught. I was like, after saving him, he's gonna wake up and half his family's gone. Like this is bullshit. It's like
yeah, Ashley, I fully feel that. Nick, what did you think of the movie?
So I went into this with very low expectations because, as you and I have discussed offline, the last phase of Marvel has been very hit or miss for me, quality-wise. So I went in with very low expectations and was extremely shocked because I think I was in tears like 4 or 5 separate times throughout the movie. And like Ashley said, I was convinced that half of them were going to die. The second that you saw like Groot's decapitated head in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is the kind of movie that we're watching. Okay. Yeah. And then I remember at the end when Peter's floating in space and his like face starts to contort, I was like, this is really how they're going to kill him off. Yeah. Like, this is dark. But well, I have a couple little tiny issues with it. Overall, to me, this is top tier Marvel.
Yeah. And Brett, what did you think? Because I know you and I felt exactly the same.
Fucking Christ. I think the Guardians franchise is my favorite Marvel mini franchise at this point. I think that the Guardians franchise is the only time we've ever seen a team done period in film, because the X-Men movies are all about the team always breaking up or getting back together. And then the Avengers are Avengers movies for 2 movies, and then it's just a Marvel movie. It's just everyone. But like with Guardians, we actually got to feel 10 years of these characters like growing together, forming new dynamics, coming. The fact that like we actually have different rosters, like Thor was a member for a hot second. Mantis is now like a main character. That I love. And then the fact that James Gunn was able to oh god, it's going to be a very tearful podcast episode, reach into my brain and extract all of these superhero stories that I wrote for myself to star in like elementary school and middle school and high school, and put them on a big screen for me to watch. It has been a very intensely intimate experience that I never expected to happen, but oh God, yeah. I spent all of last Monday's therapy session just talking nonstop 45 minutes about this, this movie.
I love that. Okay, so I basically felt the same way Brett did. I cried. I feel like every 15 to 20 minutes I was crying in this movie. From the opening, I think I know people get annoyed at the musical cues, but I love the musical cues, and I think they've never worked better than they did in this movie. And I've always loved them. They've never not worked for me, but I think they really upped the we're doing something emotional. We're going to play a song that makes it more emotional.
I think that Guardians does it well. And I think you can compare it to the first Suicide Squad, because that felt very much like DC's reaction to, they like songs they already know in a superhero movie. Do it. Like a Suicide soundtrack is just it's Seven Nation Army. It's can't remember either. It's songs songs you hear at a basketball game or whatever. Whereas every single Guardians movie has always felt like a very, very personal mixtape from James Gunn's collection, his vinyl, his brain, that he is connecting to these movies, and that therefore the choices being so unexpected, I think makes all of the needle drops absolutely integral to the storyline, and I think is what is so special about the entire franchise. And at least two of the needle drops had me in tears. So.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. We're going to go into the characters, but you know what? While we're here, let's talk about the needle drops first. Because I have been blasting the soundtrack on repeat since I fucking watched this movie, and all of them make me emotional. All of them, it's so nice to be listening to these songs and I can visualize the part in the movie from the start. That acoustic version of Creep playing, showing Baby Rocket, and then showing their that they're all a little depressed and they're just kind of going through their everyday lives. Fuck, that worked so well for me that I kept tearing up and then getting it together, but then tearing up 5 seconds later. And I just thought it I'm going to sound so fucking corny in this recording, but I thought it was really beautiful, as were 10 million other things in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one really worked for me. The ones that stand out the most are that one, and then when they're doing the space jump to Space Hards in the Meantime, which is a song I love.
Yeah, just the way that he is able to visualize what that guitar riff, there's how it sounds, how it has made us feel for 25 years if you loved that song in the 90s. And then James Gunn was actually able to take what you hear, what you feel, and make it what you see. It's so... I don't know. Why doesn't this motherfucker direct music videos?
And then I loved the what is the Do You Realize playing when they're just that was very beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the fucking Beastie Boys, that maybe is one of my favorite fight scenes, new favorite fight scenes in all of the MCU.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. When Nick, what do you think of some of the needle drops?
Well, I will say with the music in this movie, maybe it's just because some of the songs I'm not as familiar with as I was with the first two films. I feel the music wise, it was less of a thing for me. There was still, there was Creep in the beginning. And then I was crying my eyes out with Dog Days Are Over at the end.
Oh yeah. I also cried to that.
But I love the soundtracks for the first two films. And it's immediately after leaving this film, I was playing the soundtrack to the first two films. So for me, the music wise, it wasn't as impactful as the first two were. But one thing that I did find surprising, I was messaging one of my friends about the movie, and he was the opposite. He was I felt this one, as compared to the first two, was borderline getting ready to turn into a musical. And I was well, I didn't get that. I don't know. I guess it's just different how, people interpret things. But we are talking about music with needle drops, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. I wanted to make sure I got the terminology correct.
Ashley, what do you think of the music?
I feel bad, and you guys may be starting to feel dated here, but so I was alive in the 80s, and the 90s, I was watching Playhouse Disney, so I had no idea what was happening in terms of the music. So sorry. I got really excited when Rocket was trying to play 2000, he finally made it to the 2000s playlist, and I was like, yes, and it still wasn't anything I knew, and I was like, oh. So I was like, well, yeah. So I can't really. I will say that the timing and when they would bring in certain like songs in terms of emotions, James Gunn has always been on top of that. Where like some of the Avengers movies have been very bland in that regard. You know, Russo would just bring in like war music when it's time for a fight scene or some shit like that, and James Gunn's really good on bringing in like the right, more so modern sound for like if I was. You know, like if I was a superhero, I would absolutely have like Kendrick Lamar playing in the background, like
Exactly.
cool. So it's just like, so I'm happy he modernizes it in that way. That makes it just feel like both a a fight, but also that the main character is someone from Earth. Like that was always a key part of Star-Lord's story because he literally damn near died still trying to hold on to that goddamn Walkman. So
right,
yeah.
So Brett, we are old.
Yeah, like. So, the two that stand out to me are "This Is the Day" by The and the Beastie Boys, for different reasons. And
I knew that one because I'm from Brooklyn.
Yeah, and you never sleep.
Yeah.
But like, so that the song was used at the end of Empire Records. It's like the credits song of Empire Records, which was like one of my high school movies that me and my friends would quote incessantly and.
Yep.
Just watch on a loop. And I discovered that song in high school, and it's just stuck with me for 20 years and has been a touchstone for me. And it's very like a cathartic, but like happy and sad at the same time kind of song. And so when I saw that it was on the track list, when the track list like was released, I was like, well, fuck, James, this is what you're doing to me. You're just gonna, you're already taking a song that is predisposed to making me emotional and putting it in this movie. Damn it. So that was hard. But then the other one, No Sleep Till Brooklyn, back in the days when we just had iPods and those iPods just were iPods, so you could maybe play Snake or Solitaire on it, but they just play music. And I lived in New York. And so, you're on the subway a lot, you just have music. And so that's when I listened to a whole lot of music. And I would pass the time by visualizing X-Force fighting to whatever song it was, Future Heads or Sleigh Bells or just any of my Roxy music, etc. And so that's why like Guardians has always felt so real to me, because I always see superhero fights when I hear certain songs.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he was like, we're going to do No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and it's going to be the entire song, and it's going to be all like 7 principal Guardians just murdering the fuck out of a whole lot of monsters in a bunch of like one-er like shots. I was just weeping the entire time because I was like, this is literally what I visualize in my head. I don't know what that says about me, but I'm not a critic with this movie. I'm too unbiased.
I will say, Brett did say to me, well, I don't know. I really love the movie. I don't know if I want to come on for the episode. And then after I saw it, I text Brett and said, I am begging you to come on for this because I fucking loved it so much.
This is one of the most intense experiences I've had with a movie probably since like Last Jedi. And we all saw how that went.
Yeah. But so I guess we'll get into like, one more thing before we get into the characters. I do want to talk about the thing that like I wrote a freelance piece. I'm going to write it after this for Matthew Shepard about the chosen family aspect. And I just want to talk about that for a second, because I do think, you kind of said this earlier, Brett, this is the best they've ever done with that. And I think they try to do it with Avengers, but Avengers are like coworkers who like each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, that's not me knocking them. That just, it is what it is. Like,
well, even like, so they came up with an Avengers roster that probably did feel like a found family, and all their adventures took place between Age of Ultron and Civil War.
Yeah. Yes.
Like they took place off screen. Mm-hmm. Again, it's the X-Men problem of they all formed at Age of Ultron, and then Civil War was them breaking up. And it's like, well, where are all their adventures?
Yes.
Yeah. Like we always literally that one scene in Age of Ultron when they are trying to lift the Thor's hammer is probably the most family moment
we
get out of all the movies, because after that they basically break up. And then, there's always been that running joke of the fact that the Guardians are more of a family than the Avengers are. And I know there are going to be some people who take problem with that, but it is the truth. Like they aren't people who got told by Nick Fury, there's a bad guy coming, you guys all have powers, everybody start fighting. You know, there are people who ended up finding each other along the way and chose to continue being there for each other, even in this, you know, I'm so sorry, but like even in like those 2 split seconds when we lose Rocket, and I hate that man, but Chris Pratt,
I know, he was good.
down when Rocket flatlines. I'm so sorry, but he gave us more emotion. That is the reaction of I just lost my best friend.
Yes.
Versus when Natasha actually died.
Yeah, oh well.
Exactly. And I'm like, you know, I know everyone's like, oh, they did react. Hulk through a chair, a bench. It's like, be so fucking for real with me right now.
Well, you know, what I keep thinking about is the one shot in, God, is it Endgame, where we see Nebula and Rocket sitting next to each other? Yeah. And I don't even think, they don't say anything.
Yeah, and they weren't even that close at that point. It was really just a matter of, we are all we got.
And then the fact that Nebula in this movie is so attached to Rocket, and it's subtle, but she's like, Rocket upgraded my arm. And it's like little things like that. And then you remember for 5 years, they were bonded together through their grief because they both lost. He lost Groot and the Guardians, and she lost Nebula and, I mean, the Guardians who she was getting to.
I also think about the fact that, like, one thing about what's so different from what's seeing her here than obviously the first 2 movies when, you know, it's not just the fact that like she's an official team member, it's the fact that like you can tell how close she is to like the way in which she snaps, like when she doesn't know that Star-Lord and Groot made it off the ship and that they, you know, like, or she doesn't know that Gamora is flying off and like she thinks they've been exploded. And she snaps on Drax because she, you know, it's like there's a Nebula, like the Nebula we've seen in the first 2 solo Guardian movies wasn't like that. And we both see this tinge of her strive for perfection because she gets that from her dad, who unfortunately made her feel like she has to be perfect. So when Drax messes up, she doesn't understand as a family, we still love you through faults because she wasn't loved through her faults.
Right.
She was tortured.
She was punished for them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we see that coming through, but also this matter of being so desperately scared of every like the way she snapped every time she thought someone was gone or lost.
Yeah.
You know, and like that, they were coworkers who really fucked with each other. But like that little scene we got after Natasha was like, quite frankly, like that was how I would imagine any of my coworkers would grieve. It would be a sad moment of silence, like, damn, she's not going to come into work anymore. And then it would be back to business the next day. I'm sorry.
She's not going to come into work anymore.
Natasha's desk is up for grabs.
Quite literally.
Yeah, I mean, she had a desk. She was saving the world from a desk.
That is
for 5
true.
years.
Why didn't y'all know she had a fucking sister? Like, that's not.
This made me almost, and like, I don't think I've ever said this about a straight person, but like, I almost was like, God, I wish James Gunn could do the X-Men in the MCU. Cause like, this is what I want from the X-Men, right? Like, the X-Men movies, they're very of the time. So it's not like I'm like, well, the first 2.
But also, they made a lot of them recently, and they were still, air quote, of the time. They never updated them, goddamn it.
Yes.
They stayed in 2000.
Also that. But like, you know what I mean? Like, I do think taking this formula would work so well with the X-Men, and I really hope that that's what they do, because the X-Men that's why the X-Men aren't the Avengers, right? They are a family. They've always been a family. That's their whole thing. So I really hope we get that, because what you said about Nebula, Ashley, is so true. Like, I don't think I've ever loved Nebula as much as I loved her in this movie. Mm-hmm. And I loved her as like the fucking like mayor den mom of nowhere, right? Like,
well, and back in the first one, I just loved how Karen Gillan was given a 2-dimensional, she's a henchwoman essentially. Yeah. And she was like, okay, cool. I'm going to scream every line and just look pissed off at all times. And I love that about her performance in the first one, is she was just like, oof. I think James Gunn said, I saw in an interview or whatever, he was like, play her like she is like Marilyn Monroe doing Clint Eastwood. Like, that is the voice. Like, do that. It's like, yeah, that's what that was.
Yeah, that is what that is.
She was always like, hey, boys, I'm going to kill you. Like, it's so good.
Nick, what'd you think about the like found family, chosen family aspect?
Listening to you guys talk, I would agree that the Guardians seem to be more focused on family, way more so than the Avengers. Because I mean, even to Ashley's point, like technically, it was a major plot point in Infinity War and Endgame that the Avengers were split. Like that was part of the issue of what they were facing. So this was, I don't know, it was a really heartwarming journey to see how everybody ended up. I think all of their character arcs made sense, and with Nebula, I think my favorite scene with her showing how much she's changed and how much she cares about the rest of the Guardians was, even though it was played for laughs, it was the scene where she's talking to Peter, and Peter's kind of like, "Oh, you have like the most beautiful black eyes that I've ever seen," and it's, you know, she's not immediately trying to like kill him or something like that, which is so far from the Nebula that we were introduced to in the beginning. And it's kind of just subtleties like that I feel play better on screen and let you kind of illustrate how far she's come. You don't have to have it being so explicit. And now I am 100%. I want James Gunn to do X-Men now too, because I feel like with the X-Men movies, it's always been about, here are the X-Men, here are the plot, or here's the plot, here are their powers. Whereas the Guardians, it's never really been about that. It's always been about the family aspect.
Mm-hmm.
When I was watching that fight scene, I realized like the Guardians are a very low-powered team.
Right.
Yeah. Like most of them are just really good fighters or have kick-ass weapons. I mean, like when Thor was a member, it's like, well, no wonder they were like, we have a literal god on our team now. Finally. Yeah, go do that. Go just take care of everything.
Oh yeah. Like when they're fighting Adam Warlock in the beginning, I did not like, obviously nobody probably knew this, but like that he was supposed to be an infant. So he wasn't going to be full powered. So as soon as he shows up and just starts demolishing people, I was like, how are they going to get out of this? Because in the comics, he would have obliterated all of them almost immediately. And that illustrated to me like just how low power they all are, but they were still working together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's funny because I was thinking about that. There's like that Annihilation arc that I really like. And I think the second one is when Adam Warlock turns into, what is it? Magus or Magnus?
Magus.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. And he does, there's like a panel where he like waves his hand and Mantis, Cosmo, and like 4 others just die. Like they drop dead because he waves his hand and like they all die. And I was like very worried that was going to happen because like he's really brutal with them in that opening. Like when he breaks Mantis's arm, I gasped because I was like, oh no.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was like worried he was going to kill people in that opening. Like Drax was going to die and that's what was going to like.
I was convinced. I mean, I have to be reminded that Groot can whatever, because I was like, God damn, it's just his head that's left.
Oh gosh! As soon as I saw the head, I was like, oh, this is that kind of movie. Like my stomach dropped, and I was like, they can't kill Groot. And then I was like, well, they already technically did one, so nothing.
yeah.
But okay, yeah, let's talk about the characters. I guess we can start with Adam Warlock since he's a more minor character. I know a lot of people didn't like him. I didn't mind him. He felt a little like added on to the movie, but I liked him. What'd you guys think?
So I'm doing the crazy thing of, God, I love making spreadsheets and databases. And so I went through and like all the Guardians characters from the movies, I was like, let me find all of their key issues, including their first appearances, and then read them all in chronological order. So I am currently in 1974. But like reading Adam, because I watched, I know Adam Warlock from like the 90s, and I know like he's not a baby. Like, what is this? Like, so I was kind of like, I feel bad for any Adam Warlock super fans watching this. But then when I went back and read his first appearances, he did come out half-baked. Like he awoke too early. He doesn't know anything in like his like Fantastic Four and Thor appearances in like the late 60s. He doesn't know what's going on. He talks really weird. And it isn't until, and I didn't realize this, the High Evolutionary is who gives him his name, which I thought that, making him the villain of this was a random choice. But then going back and reading those issues, I was like, oh, that's cool. So you can kind of see, I like that I can see where James Gunn might have gone back and like read those issues and been like, okay, like he came out too early. He is a child. He doesn't know anything. What does that look like in a James Gunn movie? It looks like a hot dum-dum.
Yeah.
A hot dummy.
Ashley, what do you think of Adam Warlock?
So I was I wouldn't say I'm a huge like diehard Adam Warlock fan, but I am more familiar with the more powerful version from the comics, and so I was taken aback a bit and a little upset by it, even though it was well explained. And I also understood like you can't really have him be the powerful, Warlock, Adam Warlock that we're familiar with, because then the movie's over the first 20 minutes in the opening scene.
Right.
But at the same time, I think really, to be fair, I think really maybe the bad taste in my mouth is like he should have been introduced more properly in Guardians 2, and we should have a more developed Adam Warlock now. I mean, it's nothing we can do about it, but I think it's just the fact that like I don't really know where he fits in the overall story of the MCU, being past the Infinity Saga of it all.
Oh yeah.
And then it's like, I'm happy he's here. I like him in the comics. I'm just very confused now about him. And all of this. Like, they made him fit in the story, but if they had erased that plot line and just had the high whatever people is chasing the Guardians, would the movie have still worked? Yes. So it's like, and then on top of that, it was disappointing in that we got such a breathtaking sort of fight scene in the beginning with him that did sort of allude to how power, like, it did a good job in showing it. And from there, it went downhill to, oh, he's a baby, which again, I understood the explanation. The explanation works. I just think that where we are in these movies, it's like, so what are we supposed to really do with him now?
Yeah.
So I guess I was a bit taken aback. He more so served comedic foil and to save Star-Lord at the end. So it's like, they did a good job of showing, I guess, what he's capable of and what he will be capable of. I'm just trying to figure out what those capabilities are supposed to do if Kang the Conqueror is supposed to be the next big bad. I mean,
because like his main two buds are Drax and Gamora, which are the two actors who specifically have been like, we are done.
It's over. It's over. So I'm just
did Zoe Saldana said that too?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
I mean, to be fair, she's affiliated with like huge franchises, and I feel like they're probably paying her more now for Avatar than Guardians. So I can understand it. But they did. This movie came out 2013, 2014? No. Yeah.
2014 was the first Guardians.
Okay, so that means they were filming 2013. So like, this would be 10 years of her life. So I can,
Yeah. And like, but the thing is, I'm really glad they didn't have to kill the characters for them to leave, because Marvel usually does that.
Happy with that. They were able to tie up everyone's story in a way where it makes sense why they wouldn't pop up again.
But at least leaves the door open.
Yeah, there's this very small though path if they do want to do so. Yes. But like, if Zoe Saldana really sticks to her guns, it's like, nah, I'm done. Like, us watching the future movies, it's like Thanos is gone. There's no reason for her story to be really tied into this. She's a Ravager. She's not really like a
happy Ravager.
A happy Ravager.
Okay, but we'll get to it.
Nick, what'd you think of Adam Warlock?
So I'm 50-50 on it. Like, I do feel like he was kind of tacked on to the movie, and I feel like maybe it was just my expectations, but the whole baby aspect, like Ashley said, while I understand the explanation, I feel like the fans have been waiting for him ever since he was teased in the post-credit scene. To finally, all these years later, get him and him basically be useless for the majority of the movie, that was kind of irritating a little bit. But at the same time, I understand it, because I know, Ian, you and I have discussed this, but kind of what they did with She-Hulk, where we watched Bruce go through 10 plus years of learning how to control being the Hulk, and then She-Hulk immediately within a single episode knows how to control her powers. I'm glad that they didn't do that with Adam, that it's slowly building up. But I just wish that maybe the storyline that we got in this film could have been a Disney Plus special or something like that. That's so fair, that by the time we got to see him in the movies, he was fully the Adam Warlock that we know from the comic books.
Yeah. That's fair. Brett, who do we want to move on to next?
Cosmo. I don't know. You want to get like smaller ones out of the way, like Cosmo and Kraglin.
Yeah, we'll do Cosmo and Kraglin. I thought their storyline was cute. I did wish I was expecting Cosmo to be a more active member of the team.
Bitch, I was expecting Cosmo to die at the very end when he was telekinetically holding the High Evolutionary. I was like, if you fucking kill this telepathic dog, I am done. But like, she was trying so hard at being such a good dog.
Yes. I do like how James was doing really good payoffs, like building, like, you know, us with listening to the whole bad dog thing, the whole movie. And then when Cosmo comes in to save Kraglin, like, yeah, she's a good dog. And, you know, it was like, that was a really, even low key, the last line from Rocket, where he finally calls himself Rocket Raccoon, was kind of like, finally hearing Avengers Assemble in Endgame. It was like, because I'm like, that used to piss me off when he was like, I'm not a raccoon. And I'm like, bitch, like for a split second, when he went to the little thing where all the raccoons are, that he was the litter that he got picked out of, I thought it was going to say something other than a raccoon, since he was so fucking determined. I was like, damn, maybe they made him something else.
Yeah, I always liked Cosmo. I've always loved that Cosmo is just this like dog with a thick accent that's also telekinetic, and I don't know, it's so weird, and I like it, and I was glad that we got a little bit more of like Nowhere, because I was worried once they left Nowhere. I was like, no, but we haven't, like the same problem we were talking about with the Avengers, where it's like they were only the Avengers, you know, fully for like one movie, and then the rift starts and then they break up. I didn't want it to be Nowhere is the end of 2 and then blows up in 3, or just like isn't in 3. I was glad that we, like, even though they left Nowhere, we still ended up back there and we still saw the people of Nowhere help them.
Yeah, and it became a very important part of the final act.
Yes. I was really glad we tied back into that. I love that we got that like weird card game scene where it's like a bunch of, everyone was a character from a previous movie. I would have liked I was really hoping, and this is just like a whatever, I was really hoping Howard the Duck would show up at the end to help them.
Justice for Howard the Duck. Because I'm glad that we got more Cosmo, but I was sitting there and I was like, this is his moment. This is Howard's moment. And he had like one line.
I know.
I literally yelled in the theater. I was like, Howard the Duck! And I'm in a really small town, so no one here knows what the fuck I'm talking about. So I'm looking around like, why is no one reacting to this?
Nick, what do you think of Cosmo and Kraglin and like the other characters?
I mean, I loved it. I think with Kraglin, the whole thing with the whistling and the weapon, I enjoyed that. There was a thing that I was discussing with somebody. We were comparing it to America from Doctor Strange, and about how like at the end she just like he tells her, oh, you know, just believe in yourself, and suddenly she knows how to control her powers. This felt a little bit different. This felt better written. The way that at the end he was suddenly able to control it perfectly. I thought it was just expertly woven in, and it made sense because it wasn't something that was just added into this movie. Like we saw him practicing in the last movie when he stabs Drax with it. So I mean, I loved it. Even the good dog scene, like it was a little bit telegraphed, but it was, I don't know, it was just really well done. I cried at that. Like I said, justice for Howard the Duck. And although this isn't a character, but with discussing Nowhere, I was gagged that they suddenly like outfitted this head with engines, and so like it became a spaceship versus just a planet that everybody was living on. I absolutely loved that in this film.
Yes.
Do we think do we think that Kraglin would become a main character if he wasn't played by the director's brother?
Probably not.
That's I mean, like I still like for a while I was kind of like, he's the director's brother, get him off the screen. Like I was kind of, you know, anti-nepotism or some bullshit. But I feel like they did a really good job of it helped seeing him in Thor Love and Thunder, and also the holiday special. Like they really did.
Yes.
Because his context in the first one was so heavy Yondu. He was such a Ravager.
Right.
And like in the holiday special, when they used, he's really good to have around because he has this long history with Quill that no one else does. So I think like he actually does fulfill a really interesting niche in the Guardians that is needed. And so like I am now fully on board. I am excited to see him. I was happy that he finally got a little uniform.
Yeah,
I also
me too.
love that they were able to use him to bring in a last minute appearance from Yondu for the final movie.
Yes, yeah.
Was that CGI? Or was that real? Because that looked real to me. And I love that they would have just brought him back to do like this 3-second cameo where he doesn't talk.
I think they did.
I love that.
Because he probably was like in the makeup chair longer than he was
in the movie.
Right.
I mean, it is Marvel. I feel like they can pull that off. But like, it was wild that it's like, oh, and we don't see him again. It's just like a quick 2-second whatever. All right. But that was all we needed, right? I didn't need like that scream with Sam seeing her dad in like reflections. I didn't need him seeing,
oh God,
Yondu everywhere and Yondu talking to him. And I'm actually glad you mentioned that, Nick, about America, because I thought you were going to say it was the same, because I was like, ooh, it is not the same. Because it's like the same idea, but way better. Well, with way better execution, right?
Well, and I think like it was also directed better as a moment, because I remember in the theater being like, God, like I can't even remember it because it's been over a week for me, but the stakes at that moment felt so high, and I was like, Kraglin's the only one there. How is he? Like, I was like, he's gonna die. Like, so the directing and the writing and stuff made that moment work, because it was like his back is against a fucking wall. He's got a whistle for his life,
Exactly.
and he did it. Whereas I can't even remember the moment, I don't know, that America believed in herself and started, it's like, okay, sure.
I think it's just because you didn't really see her trying throughout the movie. It was like she forgot she had powers for most of it. She was screaming behind Doctor Strange almost every second. And then, like, I think also with that scene, like, it made sense because, like, when you think about that power, you probably think, oh, you have to think about where to lead it. And then you have Yondu with this, it's really about following your emotions, follow your heart type of thing. Like, it actually... Like it was, like when you see someone training and like a coach gives you some last minute tip that actually helps you land or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it just actually made sense with us watching from the beginning of the movie to the end. Whereas with America, it was literally like, it's like she forgot she had powers for most of the movie. And then last minute, Doctor Strange says, believe in yourself. And now all of a sudden she can defeat the Scarlet Witch. Like, okay.
Exactly, because Kraglin, it was back against the wall, but we saw him practicing throughout the whole movie. Whereas with America, her back was against the wall the entire movie. Like her life was at risk the entire time, and she wasn't able to figure it out. So it made more sense with Kraglin because he wasn't under attack the entire movie.
He did have time to practice.
Exactly,
and we got to see it. That makes all the difference, right? Like, oh, we know he's been practicing. We know he's been having, like, trying to get it to work, but it hasn't. Like, she just kind of would say it doesn't work. So, who do we want to move on to High Evolutionary next?
Yeah.
I gotta say,
oh my God,
I think he's one of the best villains Marvel's done in a very long time. Not because, you liked him or you sympathized, but because he was, like, just terrible. And I like that he pulled that off.
Oh, yeah. I love a villain that makes you angry. And I was angry every single time he was on screen. When somebody was, whatever her name was, his like assistant with the blue eyes, whenever she's talking to him, and then he would just get in her face and start screaming at her.
Yes.
Ooh, I wanted to punch him through the screen.
Yes. And
and it was, you got to see also like through those flashbacks, you got to see, the man ? I don't know if he's an alien, but you got to see like that scientific side of him, and then you got to see him break when Rocket proved that he was smarter than him,
right?
And so that kind of is like, oh, that's why he's a total lunatic, and also that's why his face is stretched across his face,
right?
Oh yeah.
I was happy that, for what you just said, Nick, like I was happy they gave us a villain that like wasn't just like, oh, he does bad things. It's like he does bad things and we get to see him like, chewing scenery and being awful to even the people, like the bad people that work for him. He's still awful to them.
Right.
And I appreciated that. I somehow didn't know High Evolutionary was the bad guy in this until we saw him in the movie.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know he was a villain. Like, I don't know why I had no idea.
I was excited because I was like, ooh, we get animal people. Woo! And then I was like, this is Bova's chance to shine. we didn't get the cow nurse in WandaVision, but maybe we will. Still didn't.
Ashley, what'd you think of High Evolutionary?
I hated him more than Thanos.
Right?
Like, so genuinely. Like, not, and then want people to understand, I'm not saying he's a worser guy than Thanos. Something like, I think what it is that like Thanos actually convinces himself that he's doing something right, or he's doing for the greater good, or whatever the bullshit may be. I think even he understands he's an asshole. He takes so much pride in that. And then seeing both sides of like the version of him in the present that has more powers because of whatever tech he's developed, but then this past version of him, also, this movie, James Gunn has done more for PETA than PETA will ever be able to do for itself. Because there's several times I was like, I am about to go vegan. This is like, but his like sadistic outlook, like they're not even living beings when he, you know, the way in which he was treating them and things like that. And then it almost was like he was drunk the way when he realized that the raccoon is smarter than him and can figure something. Like, you know, like you see those things where some mad genius would find out he created something that's so smart and would take pride in it. And instead, that's how fucking up his own ass he is that he's just more so concerned about himself being the smart, whatever the case may be. But yeah, it was just like, he was so much more, I keep using, what's like the right adjective? I have 3 degrees in communications. I should be able to figure it out. But
I have an MFA. I don't fucking know what are words.
I don't know what the fuck. But like,
he was petty.
Yeah, it's like he just lived in this vile, putrid, like it's almost reminiscent of like the imperfectionist that we were talking about a little bit around Nebula because of what Thanos did to her, but like so much more than that. Because he just extends it to everyone and everything, to the place where he's creating whole planets and then destroying people. Yeah.
Didn't he say that wasn't that like the third Counter Earth that he'd completely like built and then destroyed?
Yeah.
Right.
And so and I'm also kind of shocked he didn't know Rocket was out there because, like, aren't we at a place now in the world where everyone's kind of aware of these? Because, like, when Thanos snapped half the world,
I thought that too.
It wasn't just Earth, so it would have been Counter Earth too.
I was gonna bring that up when we talked about Star-Lord because I was like, but wouldn't his grandpa know he's alive? But we'll talk about that when we get to Star-Lord. But yeah, no, I almost am like, I want them to do more villains like this. Like, I want it to be like, you hate the fucking villain.
Yeah.
And like, not you hate them just because like they did a bad thing, but you hate them because they did a bad thing. And we also see just like how fucking terrible they are. I think that just like, it sounds stupid because, right, that sounds like what you would get with a villain, but Marvel doesn't often do that, right?
It's because they make most of their villains sympathetic in some way, shape, or form. So even though you don't approve of what they're doing, they make it, they hone it in on you to understand how they got to this place. With Killmonger, you know, we see he was abandoned. Even with Namor, it's like, you know, his people are being colonized left and right. Who else?
Even Gore, it was like his child was murdered.
The daughter.
You know? So it's like, while we're all on the same page, this is a villain and we're not supposed to like him. We may not necessarily like him, but on some level we feel bad for them. And so that kind of taints the whole feeling of like, we don't want this epic fight of kill him. We want like, can someone help him or something like that?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And here is just 100% pure. I want them to put him up on a stake and everybody form a line and get to stab him one by one. Like, you know, we need...
But right, and that's why I thought his death was so gratifying when they all go back, right?
Yeah. There's like a real economy of storytelling with him, because you mentioning like that we usually get sympathetic villains, and it's like, yeah, like High Evolutionary's role in the story is not to be sympathetic. He's a metaphor. Like, he is there to represent the fucked up trauma that you have to blow away in order to get past and like grow as a person. And so he doesn't need to be any more, you know, he doesn't need to have a grand vision or anything. He's just evil, because that's the thing that we can relate to on a base level. Like, I have a part of my brain that tells me I'm horrible and I hate, like, you know, and that's kind of like what he is in a way. And I think that also speaks to like the entire plot is so very simple. It's like, gotta go get X and then we need Y to open X, so gotta go get Y, you know, and that leaves you so much more room to do all this character stuff that is so satisfying.
And it really is, right? It's just, it fucking is. His defeat felt so good because I was worried, like we all said, I was worried all the whole movie that someone was going to die. I was so worried. And like, especially this fucking villain that I hate, I didn't want him to be able to be like, ha, I killed one of you. Like, I was like, no, I don't want this motherfucker getting any kills in. He murdered all those precious fucking animals. Like,
exactly.
I just want him dead. And I just felt so good about it, watching them demolish him and Gamora just fucking stabbing him on her sword. I was like, yes, thank you. This is great. It reminded me, to bring it back to horror, have any of you seen Death Proof? It's like one of my favorites in Grindhouse.
I've seen it once back when it first came out. So
at the end, when Rosario Dawson and Zoe Bell and they all just like get Kurt Russell and just like fucking like gang up on him and beat the shit out of him at the end. Like that is such a gratifying ending, and that's what this reminded me of. And I love that kind of ending.
I mean, this movie, there's a lot of dark moments in this
Yes.
movie as compared to the first two films. And I feel like with this villain, especially because his whole thing is torturing and murdering animals,
Yeah.
I feel like that plays to the audience because, especially, fans of horror, we never want to see the dog die.
Right.
We never want to see the dog die. So the entire time, I mean, it was probably, this subconscious. I was like, he needs to die, and it needs to be brutal because of what he is doing to creatures that are just in every way, shape, or form innocent.
Like I didn't want him just in a ship that blows up. Like I wanted this.
Exactly. Like it needs to be
R.I.P.
dark-sided.
Elizabeth Debicki.
When they rip his face off, and it was absolutely disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
God.
So that camera, I'm surprised they because usually Marvel we'll get a nice flash of a fleshless face. They're like, nope, we're showing it. We're showing it a lot.
Do you think it was like James Gunn is leaving and they kind of are like, yeah, you can do what you want? Because this did feel like that, and like some of the violence and some of the like.
I mean, do we want to talk about Lila Teefs and Floor now? Because
let's move on to the wacky animal pals that were so fucking cute.
Jesus Christ. Showing them getting shot and murdered was Jesus.
I've had a few friends that said that like they couldn't handle the like animal abuse, and that it like, and I do get that. I mean, I'm actually, Nick, to go back to your horror comment, I know everyone's always like that, but I'm like, if the owner of the dog can die, the dog can die too. Like everyone's free game is how I feel. So like, while it's like, I don't want the animal to die, I do feel the same way. Like, sure, an Evil Dead Rise, spoiler, like when the kids die, I thought that was a little too bleak. But like, for me, I'm like, if a kid can die, then a fucking animal can die too. But like Marvel, this felt especially like, I don't know. I was very surprised. I knew they had to die, right? But I was surprised that we like saw it. Like I kind of thought it would be like maybe High Evolutionary has Rocket, and then he puts him back in his cage, and suddenly the friends aren't there, and like we can assume that they died, but they really fucking.
It was a stressful,
them.
harrowing moment. Like his entire escape was which is like, we've now had 10 years of building up to Rocket's trauma, and that being such a thing that he doesn't want to talk about.
Yeah.
That is just kind of essential to his character. And so, I mean, in a way, like they made a huge promise 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And James Gunn was like, I have to make this horrible. And yeah.
But are any of you familiar with the comic that people keep mentioning that like that storyline is
We Three?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-mm. We Three is great. And it's that.
Right? And the weird thing is I'm like, are those comic people going to sue him? Because like James Gunn had been saying he wanted to do a movie of We Three, and then basically, because it's not a Marvel comic, right?
No, it's a Vertigo, I believe. But it, so like all those characters are in the 80s Rocket miniseries.
Oh, I thought like just Lila was.
Well, I think there's also Wal Russ.
Oh.
So I don't know why they changed his name to Teefs.
Right.
I mean, I guess I do. Wal Russ is also stupid. They're all stupid. So yeah, I mean, there's probably enough, leeway.
Because, and I like the animal thing to me, and I mean this in like a good way. It felt like a children's book, but for adults. The way it's like a tale of like using animals to tell us about like, the like cruelty of humans and like, I
mean, this is some old school Bambi Disney bullshit. Like they brought that back.
Yeah, like it reminded me of a kid's book that I would have read as a kid that would have traumatized me. And I can't decide if I would have loved it because it was quote unquote adult or if I would have been too sad because animals. But like, I love the Redwall trilogy as a kid, and that's all about animals, like anthropomorphic, I can't even say the word, about like animals that fight in like a Lord of the Rings type world, and they get like murdered. Like I remember one falling in like a trap that was a pit and getting like a stake through their leg, and then they're trapped. So that's what I kept thinking of with this. But to be fair, Redwall wasn't actually a kid's series. My mom just let me read it as a kid. But yeah, Ashley, what'd you think of all the animals?
Definitely tough watch for me.
Yeah.
But I think, the way in which what's sad enough is that scene is really just explanatory of not just Rocket's backstory and how he got his powers, not powers, but how he, was able to talk and things like that. But like that scene specifically when he loses his friend, when he snaps, takes the gun and starts shooting them with really great aim. And then, even clawing the man's face off. And like, that's when we see a bit of our Rocket, albeit in grief, but like the Rocket we know who becomes, like that scene where he's able to figure out what they need to do to make the correct, animals or whatever he was trying to create. That showed us the intelligence aspect, when we think about the fact that Rocket had a part in building the time travel device. Like he was on the same wavelength of Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, which really just showed his intelligence of it all. That was our first time recognizing the fact that he was that smart. And that's clearly what made this man snap, and realizing that the raccoon is smarter than him. But now we also see I don't like to say just completely violent aspect, because the violence was very much deserved.
Right.
But now the two and two going together, but unfortunately we see the tragic story that's attached to it, that he's been avoiding this whole time with his new family. And so it's just like such a perfect origin story, in that it explained everything without having to like guide us and having to, I hate those origin stories that like put two and two together, like we're 2-year-olds. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
Well, here's how Wolverine got his jacket.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it was a very coherent story on its own, that there's no part of Rocket that we don't understand from it. And so that was that was so much brutal. The rabbit, like repeating that line and then it goes quiet. And then I didn't even see Teef's dead. Now I don't want to go back and see the fucking movie. But I did, obviously. And remember earlier when I was talking about how I would put my head down, I knew shit was going too sweet. And so I put my head down when Lila was all excited because he got her out. And I put my head down. I was like, this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well. This is not going to go well. And then the bullet went off and I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, my dumb ass, of course, was looking when the shootout happened. So I had to see the dead bunny. And I was like, all right.
It's so sad. And like, it's just, I understand why it might have been too much for some people, but I like, and this is so corny, but I really do think it was like really beautiful storytelling, and some of the best storytelling Marvel has had in a really long time.
I was just happy that they were not afraid to show that. I mean, like to what you said, like, yes, if I'm, say I'm watching a slasher movie or something and everybody's dying, no, don't like pretend like you can't touch the dog or the cat or something. Like everything should be, expendable in that sense. But it is hard for a lot of people. I mean, I can watch something, and the dog dies in Halloween and stuff like that, and I'm not freaking out about it. It is sad because they're more innocent than everything else that we're seeing. But with what I was saying earlier, where there's a lot of dark moments in this film, I appreciate that because they didn't shy away from it. Like, this is something that happens in real life. People abuse animals and stuff like that. Right. And granted, they're not just normal animals, like they're talking and stuff like that. So it humanizes it a little bit more, but I don't know. I mean, it sounds corny to be like, James Gunn, you were so brave by doing this, but I don't know. Like, I think that added something to the movie, that there was they just weren't afraid to explore this. And I don't know. I'm just kind of making this up as I go, but I know like a lot of the complaints over the last couple of movies is that they've kind of leaned in more to the younger audience and to the family friendly aspect and the jokes. And while this film has a lot of jokes, it's, at least to me, it's darker than the previous two entries. I don't know. It just felt, with all the animals, it felt like the perfect send off to, I mean, I'm sure there'll be more movies in the future, but at least this trilogy. It felt like we watched not just the characters themselves grow and mature, but just the story as well, like the tone of the films.
Yes, I feel like the storytelling was like very. There wasn't a like Marvel moment of shying away. It didn't, or at least didn't feel like that to me. There wasn't like a. I mean, we fucking saw the dead animals, right? Like we saw Lila get shot. We like, I really appreciated the like adultness of the story, but it wasn't even like, clearly a kid could see this too, but like it might upset a kid too much. And I appreciate that they weren't like, I don't know, just like going, like shying away from it. All right, Brett, who do we want to pick next to move on to?
We get into the core Guardians. This Mantis.
Yeah, let's do Mantis. I was glad she got more of a personality and that she wasn't just happy and positive. Like when she snaps at Nebula and is like, "You fucking want perfection from everyone," and is like yelling at her, I was like, "Oh, good. We're like, yes, give her emotional depth. Like, give me this is what I want."
I never expected Mantis to be like one of my favorite characters. And
Yeah, me neither.
There's something, I mean, it's, whatever passes James Gunn did on the Avengers scripts, if he did. I mean, like, they really did give her more of a personality in Infinity War.
Yeah.
That, like, they built, well, like, God, is there a moment at the end of 2 where they're like, everybody get your game faces on? And she's like, ah.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just like that, like, earnest positivity and, like, the way that her femininity and her sensitivity was never a detriment. Like, her powers are good. Like, she's actually very, very, she's probably the most powerful Guardian, and her power is empathy. And they don't make it like, Mati on Planeteers, and he's Heart, who's the most important of all of us. And it's like, no, fire and water and wind are better, But it's like, they really made Mantis feel like an integral part of the team and a different kind of character. I don't know. I just really love her. I just love her. And I think that the holiday special coming right before this also really helped a lot, because that was a big character piece for her. I was 100% sure that when she was fucking petting the obelisks, I was like, do not have one of them eat her.
Yes, I was worried about that too. Also, those were the things from the beginning of Guardians 2, right?
Of 2, yeah, which like gave them all a headache. And so I do like that she's like, no, they just wanted to be loved, and now they're my friends.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, I liked her, and I liked that they gave her more to do.
She's the one, I would say, like, as compared to Drax. Now, granted, we have a general understanding of what their backstory is. I don't feel like I need to see more of their backstory like we did with Rocket. Like, she was just on Ego's planet the whole time. But I will say that the way that they wrote her in this film and the way that they sent her off at the end, I would be okay if we didn't go back and see more of Drax. But I'm excited to see what's coming in the future for Mantis. I feel like there's a lot of story there to go through.
Yeah.
But I mean, she was definitely a highlight of this movie. They gave her more to do, which I appreciated, and they gave her a little bit more of a personality. And I feel like this was the perfect stepping stone to see what's going to come for her in the future.
It is really crazy how she's not an original member of the Guardians. She comes in the second one, and she is the missing puzzle piece that they needed in the first one. She is, because all the rest of them are assholes. All the rest of them are spiting, shouting assholes who cannot agree on anything. And then you have Mantis, who is just unrelenting empathy and sincerity. And just like the way that in the beginning of the movie, when they're like trying to do something else, and she keeps asking Quill about, why aren't you going back to Earth? Don't you have a grandfather? And he's like, why are we talking about this right now? It's like, she knows that he's always losing people. And it's like, you have people on Earth.
Yeah.
And you left them. Why, and it's just, it's great having her on the team, and that's what makes these such great like team family movies, is all of them fit together so neatly.
Yes, you are right. That is a good point. She really was the missing like piece that they needed, because she is like positive and sweet, but also an empath, and like literally an empath, not like, someone who's like, oh, I'm empathic. But like you are right. She has definitely she definitely filled out the team well in this, I thought.
She's the heart.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to do Gamora next, since she's not as main of a character?
Yeah. Well, this is Gamora 2014.
Right. Yes. The thing I will say that I am most happy about, which folks in our Discord server were talking about too, and I fully agree with, is that I was so happy that she did accept the Guardians of the Galaxy, but still went back to the Ravagers.
Agreed.
Yes. Like,
I would have actually been frustrated had she gotten back with, well, not back with, but because it's a different version, but if she had ended up linking up with Quill at the end and then they just started the romance over, I would not have liked that. It made sense narratively that we soften her a little bit by the end, but that she goes back out there to do her own thing, giving that distinction that the Gamora that we all knew and loved is dead.
Yeah. I was so worried that's what we were leading to, because I don't really love a plot of like, oh, you like me. No, I don't. No, I don't. Okay, I do. Like, I really hate that and especially genre shows love doing that. Where it's like, oh, you annoy the person into dating you. Like, I don't like that. And so I was glad that he annoyed her into accepting them. But it wasn't even that. It was more like that hindered it, if anything. But like, she accepted it because that like, even though that was a different version of her, that was still her. So we do know that she has it in her to soften. And I was glad we got a little bit of softening, but not too much. And like, I kind of liked her at first, I didn't love her so much. She was a little too harsh. And that's like too severe. And that's how I felt about Gamora in the first movie. So that's good, right? It tracks. So I was glad, like, eventually, like when she's in when she's on the ship, she goes to save, right? Like, she goes to save. She saves Peter and Groot, right?
Well, no, like, no. Well, she's watching the ship with Rocket on it because everyone else is who knows where, and then Adam Warlock attacks, and it's like, oh, fuck! You're like, I gotta like,
and she helped save Rocket from the guy that like tore through the Guardians in the opening of the movie.
Yeah,
and yeah, I liked that. Ashley, what do you think of Gamora in this movie? Did you like her?
I did. I'm really happy that they stuck with 2014 Gamora. I did feel like, I don't know, are they going to have like all her memories come back or some bullshit that's like unexplainable? But I think what's interesting in the whole aspect is, I mean, okay, some of stuff. To be fair to Star-Lord, it's hard to be mourning someone when they're like technically alive.
Right, yeah.
Your version of them is dead. I'm like, damn.
That would fuck you up.
You know, like it's one thing when it's like they're gone. It's like, fuck, there's some place they just don't give two shits about you. They can't remember your name.
Well, yeah, it's like, I don't even know what that's a metaphor for, because that just doesn't happen. I mean, unless you get like amnesia, like on television, which I don't think amnesia works that way in real life.
I really don't. Yeah, I don't. And at least even, in cases like that, they have some memories that come back here and there. It's like, she just straight up, like, she has no connection to you whatsoever. And in the same regard, what makes it even more torturous is that technically, unlike Peter, Nebula gets her sister back. Like, like she does still have an understanding and fundamental understanding that the version she had built a relationship with is gone. But she, unlike Star-Lord, does kind of get a second chance if she wants it to still get that relationship back with her sister, because this version of her still sees her as her sister. And we know from the old version of Gamora to even this one, when we see her in Endgame, there's always been that longing to have a better relationship with her sister that Thanos was never allowed to have. So she got to have her sister back, whereas Star-Lord does not get his Gamora back. And so it's also like, and you still see that fundamental difference. Like Gamora in, which it had to be Guardians 2, like, she's now become so empathetic and sensitive and a little bit softer. She's trying to hug Nebula, and Nebula's like, what the fuck are you trying to do right now?
Yeah.
And then we see here where their way of noticing each other is to grunt. It's like that would be, it shows that softness that we got from Gamora after being around the Guardians for whatever years is just not there, even though she's always been a good person at heart. It's just that her obvious experience with a genocidal maniac raising her has gonna have its effects. But yeah, I just say that to say I enjoy the fact that, like, in a way, Zoe Saldana is playing a different character, and so she has to figure out these moments in which she gives us the Gamora we might sort of remember, but tap into that Gamora she originally got casted to play. I'm sure that was fun for her and probably a good recollection when she's saying goodbye. And yeah, for the most, I think also what this answers at the end of the day is that there was never a version of Gamora I would say was not a good person at heart, just that she'll make, more difficult decisions than the one we got familiar with. Because, like, she didn't have to save Rocket. She could have been like, fucking, I'm out several times throughout the movie. And she didn't.
Well, and at the end, she's like, what the fuck is this tree saying? He's just saying, you're all making this up, right? Like, but then at the end, when she understands him, and she's kind of like, oh, wow. Like, it's a really cool how it both, like, is closure for 2014 Gamora, but it's also closure in a way for our Gamora. The one that we love, that the Russos just threw off a cliff because they fucking love doing that. Because, like, it did like show Gamora's softening or Gamora's empathy wasn't a fluke. Like, no matter, like you said, like, no matter what Gamora we get, deep down, she is a good person who is going to do what's right, and it just depends on like how much layers of bullshit and trauma does she have to get through to get there. And I think that is just like, it's just like really underscoring Gamora was good.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And like, I did really like that, like, you know, when they're all hugging and like she smiles. But it's not, you know, it's not a full, but it's like she's smiling. And then
all of the group hugs. Oh.
Yes. And then like when she goes back to the Ravagers and they do all hug and they're like excited.
And I think that was a really cool rehabilitation also for the Ravagers, which I don't know like what happened to them during the blip or whatever. So 5 years, but like for her to go back to them, and I was kind of expecting, you know, oh, they're all going to be like, we don't even notice her. We didn't know she was gone. Blah, blah, blah. But no, like they are all genuinely like happy to see her. And it's like the happiest. These aren't the Ravagers that like Yondu led that were all assholes. Although maybe they weren't assholes because the Volume 2 kind of like retconned what we thought we knew about, but I don't know. They're good. They're good Ravagers. So Sylvester Stallone and all of them are all good people.
It could just be a reflection of the leadership. Yondu wasn't someone who was caring towards them, even with his relationship with Peter. In the end, we realized it, but like Peter didn't know that, which is why he couldn't really stand him for most of the 2 movies. And now we see, you know, it's very possible that the way Gamora is leading them is probably in a way in which they might personally also feel like, I mean, I think she actually calls them that, right? She says, I need to get back to like my family or something like that. So she, you know, she found a new family. I think it's a perfect way to say goodbye to her and understand that she's not really a superhero in the sense that she had become one in a way we're familiar with. So it's like, again, they found a way for her to explanatory way for her to never show up again without having to kill her, since we did have to see her die already. That'd be cruel. But yeah, I mean, even I also loved like when they were going into what was the name of that? When they were first trying to get the information on the passcode for Rocket, and Peter tells him you don't have to go, and Nebula got stuck someplace. And Peter told her, you don't have to go because you're just here to get paid. And Gamora's like, I'm not leaving my sister up there with that man. And I just really love that, like, that sister aspect, you know, after watching them have to fight for basically majority of the Guardian of the Galaxy movies, that like, that still has been resolved and that we're not going back to that.
Same. Yeah, I did like that. And like how like in the opening, when we first see them together, they do their hellos. But even at the end of the movie, that is their sisterly thing, right? That wasn't them being like assholes to each other. It's like, we know they're good and they're smiling and they do their thing to each other.
Because like I was wondering, like, as the movie was getting towards the end, I was like, oh, we haven't gotten really that much of Gamora and Nebula. Like, we're getting a lot of meaty character dynamic stuff, like between Drax and Mantis, and even Mantis and Nebula. But then I realized, like, at the end when they did that grunt, I was like, oh, that's all we needed in this movie, because Volume 2 was about both of them, like the two of them that had grown up concurrent together, dealing with their shit violently and coming together. And in a way, like, we've Nebula growing into being the kind of sister who could accept the love of Gamora from 2014. It's like Nebula needed to do that 5 years to get to the point where she's like, no, I do love you and I can accept a hug. Like, but we're just going to grunt.
Let's move on to Drax. Drax he was number one on my victim list of like suspects of people who would die. I was positive it was him because I didn't realize so many of the rest of them said it was their last, but Dave Bautista has been saying it forever that it's his last movie. Like I feel like he's like never not saying that. So I was like, oh fuck, they're gonna kill him because they love, if an actor's leaving, to kill that character. But
it's the Anya curse. That's what I remember that 20 years ago, Emma Caulfield being the only one saying, this is it for me.
Yes, you're right. And then she fucking died.
Anyway.
But like, Drax's development felt subtle for me and I liked it. I liked he was the one that was able to communicate with the children. And, you know, I didn't even think about this, but how in the first movie he says like stupid people dance. And then in this movie it ends with him dancing with like the kids in nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, fucking stupid. Hell. Nick, what'd you think of Drax in this?
I mean, I agree with it being subtle. I don't think it needed anymore. Yeah. Like there's certain characters which I'm fine with just sort of being the comic relief, and I don't really feel like Drax needed to have a lot of depth to him. I don't like every single character didn't need to have some super intricate backstory. But even with him, I mean, he's simple-minded, but he's also just a very simple character. And there is some depth to him, and it was just enough for me. So kind of with what I was saying before with being excited to see where they're going to go with Mantis, it felt like just like a perfect closure to Drax. And I know Dave Bautista keeps saying that this is the last time, but I also feel like, money talks. So it could end up being like a share situation with 14 goodbye tours and stuff like that. But it opens the door to be able to see him again in the future, should he want to make a cameo or something like that.
In the Moon Dragon movie, please.
I would love that.
It made sense. Narratively, it made sense because, like I said, he is a simple-minded character. I know that they play it for laughs that he's dumb, but it makes sense that the story itself didn't need to be that intricate. It made sense with the character. So I was very, very satisfied with the way that they finished his small little arc that we've had over the last 3 movies within this.
It was just Nebula being the one to say, like, no, I need you here because I realize what you are. You're a dad.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, that is like in Guardians 1. I mean, that's also Drax's just whole thing is, my daughter and wife were killed by Thanos. Although what he doesn't know is that his daughter is really a bald witch of Titan who I'm still wanting these fucking movies.
Who can maybe sometimes turn into a dragon.
Yeah, God, I love Moon Dragon.
And then I guess we'll move on to let's do Star-Lord, because I feel like Nebula and Rocket have the most to talk about.
Well, and Groot. Well, Star-Lord. Groot, actually, if any character was shortchanged in this movie, it was probably Groot, but I don't really know what else you could do with him.
Agreed.
Yeah. I was glad Groot got more action scenes, like when Star-Lord, like he's with Star-Lord for those, like, main action scenes.
Him being the smuggling device for all the guns was so cool.
Yeah. I don't think I've liked Star-Lord as much as I liked him in this movie. And I hate to compliment Mr. Pratt, but I do think he had, like, his acting was the best it's been in this, I thought, in this movie.
He absolutely ate
right
some star actors up. And I hate saying it, I do.
I know. But I'm not happy about it.
So it's fucking true, because if I could lie and make it sound believable, I fucking would.
his performance in this, especially when he thinks that Rocket is dying and he starts crying and he's screaming and you like see the spit coming out of his mouth. Like I had to put my hands up on the side so that the people aside from me didn't see me crying, because I was not expecting him to pull that out of me, but he was
yelling
did.
No, oh my God.
Yes.
I'm telling you. And it was such
CPR
a too. And he was so fucking, he started doing CPR on him. Ugh. It's like, and you could feel it. You could tell this is someone who's like, I am still grieving with the fact that Gamora is dead, even though a version of her is literally standing in front of you. You will not fucking. And also the fact that he's very clear on his relationship with Rocky. He's like, that is my best friend.
Yes.
This raccoon is my friend who I fight with, who literally beginning of the movie is taking my shit. This is my best friend. And it's very clear, even from like the family aspect we were talking about earlier, like this isn't a Guardians mission. This is friends. This is a family saving their family member. It's like everyone's very clear. He is dying, and we have 2 days to stop it. And there's just no. Damn near it could be a suicide mission, and it damn near is, and they're just very much like, well, that's what the fuck we're gonna do. Yeah. And so but that scene of him just breaking down, I hate him so much. Oh my God.
I'm cursed with Star-Lord being begrudgingly my favorite MCU character.
No judgment.
No, well, only just because, like, when I watched the 2014 movie, I realized that Chris Pratt was essentially playing, this superhero character that I had created for myself when I was a child. Like the vibe and the energy and the attitude and all that was exactly that. And so again, I've spent the last 10 years seeing me, like seeing the character that I made on being played by the exact kind of person who would disown me. So it's been a real fucking mixed bag, but no, it was super. Oh, like also just like the funny stuff. I mean, him summarizing all of the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame in the elevator.
Yeah.
It's like,
that was one thing that I was really, really hoping that they were going to address, because I know like everybody was pissed off by the fact that he started punching Thanos and fucked everything up, even though that was supposed to be what was supposed to happen and all that jazz. But I was so happy that he addressed it and was like, yeah, I kind of almost destroyed the universe because I lost my temper. And I was like, at least we're touching upon that and not ignoring that.
And that I relate to as well. I would have done the same thing. I'm not afraid to say it.
I don't always remember. Like I recently had someone message me to be like, "Oh, I was listening to your Buffy season 3 episode on enemies,
Jesus.
and you all said this," and they were like, "What did you mean by this?" And I was like, "I truly don't remember what I said. Like in an old episode, like I don't remember. There is one thing I remember you saying that has like been seared into my brain, and it is the first time I had you on for Marvel when we did Infinity War, which was I think the first Marvel movie I covered after it came out for Slayerfest, and I remember you saying that exact thing about Star-Lord.
I would have done it. I mean, well, it also depends on, like, if I wasn't, I'm now on 2 anti-anxiety medicines and 1 anti-depression. So maybe I wouldn't, but if I was off my meds and Thanos murdered my husband, yeah, I'd be punching him in the fucking face.
I thought they did a good balance with him in this one too, of the comedy with the like, you know, getting him to cry and it eliciting emotions from all of us. I was really glad. That's what I think these movies balance so well, is like they're cracking jokes and like shit talking, but also they fucking love each other. And
we got to talk about the Counter Earth scene, which is it's like Star-Lord going back to his 80s home.
Yeah.
I love the scene. I mean, the scene in that living room with that poor family is having to put up with Drax, like, take your feet off the couch. Like, and then I love them getting into the car and Star-Lord got to deliver the first F-bomb in the entire MCU, which what was it like? I can
open
fucking
the fucking
drive.
door.
Yeah, open the fucking door.
Yeah, I love that. I also I love their bickering, and then just like the way that Karen Gillan delivered the line, "Oh, I can drive."
Yeah,
to him, when he was like, "Do you want me to drive? I can drive." I was like, I love just the fucking banter and nonsense of these idiots.
My favorite part of that scene when they're in the living room is when she opens whatever the drink is, Nebula, and she's like, "Yes, this is delightful."
Yeah. And her like yell whisper.
Yeah.
And I like that I was worried the like animal people were going to turn against them and it was like a trick. I was glad they were just like, "Oh, here, yeah, we'll help you." Like I really
also,
like
where
that.
is High Evolutionary funding all those goods
Right?
and destroying all of it? All those houses and couches.
Seems
and
like a lot
cars.
of work. Yeah. And the Star-Lord, I like that. So they did the thing that they do a lot in Marvel that sometimes is a little, but it worked for me. That like he did have a plan going into like it didn't quite work out how he wanted it to, but like he had a fucking plan the entire time. And I really
just
liked
jumped.
That. Yeah.
God, I love that.
And like Groot had the fucking wings and he knew that Groot had the wings and like Groot kind of became his like right-hand man in battle in this, which I liked.
Swole Groot.
Yes.
Good Groot.
And his weird death scene, I was like, I've cried so much, I can't cry at him die. He can't die this gross, right? Like,
especially when like we had literally just made it, so I was like, finally, I can watch with my eyes open. It's like we did it, guys. And then here he is with his fucking face like exploding, right. and I was like, you in this? I was like, if there were not people in my fucking theater, you in this fucking Walkman, okay? Like it's
but he got it for Rocket,
okay? Like you mean to tell me we did all of this? I was convinced that High Evolutionary was gonna kill Rocket in that scene. I was so fucking happy when he took the goddamn gun out of his whatever. I was like, yes, because I was convinced that after watching Rocket, especially after the sort of fake death scene of Rocket. Yeah. I was when they were like, "It's not your time yet." I thought I was like, "Oh my god, he's gonna kill High Evolution." Like I thought it was like gonna be they take each other out thing. It was like, you have to, you know. Yes. So I was just convinced he was still gonna die. I just thought no one was safe, and literally till the millisecond, that's when this man gets the dumbass idea.
I know,
and I did figure Warlock was going to be the one to be able to go and get him because I'm like, they're not going to leave him floating like that unless he like disintegrates in front of all these kids and just like, is the movie not traumatizing enough for them?
Right.
My plot hole is Remember how in the first two movies he's always jumping into space and he has a fucking helmet that fits comfortably behind his ear?
I was wondering where that was.
I was like, why is he not wearing his helmet?
Where's his boots too? Because when they fucking when they jumped off the cliff thing, I mean, don't get me wrong, seeing Groot's wings was lit, so I'm not complaining, but I was just like not worried because he low key can fly. So I'm just like, what happened to your gadgets here? Why do you still have your guns? But
I wonder if there was a scene. So I was also waiting the entire movie for them to, because this is what happens in all superhero movies. Like, put these on. These are old nowhere security guard uniform. Like, I was waiting for that because that's what they always do. And I like the fact that, no, when they land on Counter Earth, they're all wearing their team uniforms as if they, had them for a while. That's what they wear. But I do wonder if there was like a scene cut that's like, oh, all we packed were these. I don't have my helmet. Like, I wonder if that seems like something that could have been cut.
Didn't they kind of do that earlier in the movie though, when they go to whatever that living planet was to get the code for Rocket? They have to put on the suits to blend in with Nathan Fillion and everything.
Like astronaut suits, not his mask and stuff like that. That were like his sort of signature costume that we're used to seeing him in. Because I'm like, you are still a human moving around these aliens because you need air.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Nebula because I have never liked her more than I did in this movie. Her trajectory has been so weird, considering she was just a villain in the comics for most of probably not anymore, but
she's gotten more complex. She was just a I would say mustache twirling, hair twirling, because she has hair. For most of for the 80s and early 90s, she has hair.
I fully will own up. I did not love, and I've liked Karen Gillan. I loved her in Doctor Who. She was one of my favorite companions. I didn't love her at first. I thought her acting was not 100% as Nebula in the first one, but now I feel like she is there 100%. I loved Nebula as this leader and house mom of nowhere, where I guess that doesn't even count as a house mom. It's a planet mom, a ship mom. I don't know.
Celestial godhead mom.
Yeah. And I love that we get to see her, how committed she is to everyone immediately. That when Adam Warlock's there, she goes, gets those cool flight suit wings, puts them on, and is just blasting the shit out of him, and then gets her ass kicked, but then still gets back up and goes to fight him.
And stabs him.
Yeah. And I don't know, I just really fucking loved her in this movie. Yeah, I don't know. What'd you guys think?
I had a mini heart attack every single time she got hit and something broke on her. Her jaw broke, her neck broke, they broke her in half. I kept forgetting. I'm like, oh, she's an android, she's fine.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how attached I was to the character until each time I thought she got.
Yeah, when Adam Warlock punches her face off, I was like, right.
But I think I don't know. It was nice to see because with what you were saying about her acting in the first one, I don't know if I would necessarily say, at least for me, that I thought that she gave a bad performance. I just think that the character was written to be very one note, and I think. In a way, the character, the behavior itself is still sort of one note, but it's cool to see her now in different environments trying to interact with different situations, like the conversation, oh, I never realized that you had such black eyes and stuff like that. And to see her
was it her saving children while also yelling at them?
Yeah.
That was me. I was like, I am her because I can't deal with the children.
It's her intention to look completely. I mean, for one, I think her first introduction to us is that even though we know she's a person, I think she's even under belief of to be very robotic because she was an android. And so then in some level, the way in which she expresses her emotions is still very it's one note, but the intention behind it has completely changed. So there's a very clear care for these kids when she sees them, because old Nebula with her sister would have been like, all right, we got everybody, let's go. And she's the one that's there are kids here. We have to go save them. So even though she's yelling at them, she's not leaving the ship, and she's even steering the ship with her arm to get the kid across.
Which again, I thought she was gonna die
Yep.
there.
Yeah,
Like
I
a
was
big
like,
fiery,
oh my
like
gosh. I was convinced someone was going to come in. And then even, you know, when Gamora starts fighting Peter, because Peter just can't let go of the fact like this is not your Gamora is dead. Nebula stops her, and Gamora says he's I'm family, and Nebula says so is he. It's like the way she expresses those emotions, like even when she drinks the drink and she's like, this is delicious. Like there's
Yeah.
no the voice behind it is excited, but we know that her emotion is like, this is the best drink I've ever had. Let's count on Earth isn't too bad. But yeah, so I feel like, and that's kind of the way she has to deliver. I don't know if that's maybe attached to the fact that she's an android, or does that come from the fact that she grew up around who she grew up, and so the expression of certain emotions wasn't really allowed or seen as a weakness. Even with her snapping on Drax, I personally just felt like that scene was I think I said this earlier, it was just, I felt like it was coming from a place of anytime she messed up, her father punished her for it.
yeah.
And so,
Right.
you know, I feel like that wasn't really a snap on Drax, but the fact that like I think she's still, gripping with this reality of how to deal with someone like that because she wasn't allowed to be. And it kind of felt like, man, and we've heard those complaints around Drax before. Oh, they dumped his character down, which if you read the comics, he actually does sort of become dumb. But yeah, even like that whole thing, I feel like they weren't just yelling at Gamora. I feel like, it seemed they weren't. I feel like James Gunn put that thing in really for the fans who've been complaining about that for fucking 10 years. But yeah, I think Karen has figured out a great way to both deliver Nebula's sort of robotic performance, but still giving us the emotion of the kid, like her chosen family. She freaks out every time she thinks someone has been hurt or is gone. Even
Oof.
that's like the most emotion we really get from her is when she hears Rocket's voice
Yeah.
over
Yes.
intercom. And and she's like, he's, you know, like that was, and when Mantis does the whole speech, like we missed you and we loved you very much. Like that was true. Like that was such a turning, like the whole, you can kind of feel like everybody taking a collective breath, even though this is like a movie, like it was genuinely
Yeah.
all stakes. Everybody would have been ruined if things had went left with
Yeah.
him. But so I think, she's, I honestly, I would have to give it to her in terms of acting. Cause I don't think I don't know a lot of people who'd be able to do that. Like that's the whole point of an actor is bringing in these different emotions. So how do you do that for someone who is literally made to be stoic, and she figured out a happy medium with it.
I think that like her entire arc, I mean, just like, you know, looking at the MCU as if it was like a TV show that's been running for 10 years, it's like, I think Nebula's character arc over 10 years is pretty remarkable. And it's almost an example of the actor is bigger than the character ever was in the comics. And so therefore you get this rich MCU character that then can be ported back to the comics. It's that like symbiotic relationship that it's really cool. And, you know, thank you, Karen. Did a good job.
She really did.
One of the things I really like that they did with her character and the arc is something like in my life that I deal with is trauma. And there's a phrase, the body keeps the score. And something that they often do in movies and TV shows is a character will be raised and be dealing with all of this trauma. And then, you know, they have a movie or a season or something like that. And then all of a sudden they behave as if what they went through no longer affects them.
Yeah.
And with Nebula, they've kept that the way that she behaves throughout all of these films. It's just the situations that she's in and how she responds to them is different, but it's still Nebula. This is, you know, it's still somebody that was tortured and had parts replaced for years and years and years. They never strayed away from that, which I really, really appreciated. It felt, you know, despite it being, you know, a movie about aliens and superheroes and stuff, that felt very grounded and real to me. So I greatly appreciated the way that they did that.
And also that it really brings home her connection with Rocket. Like the fact that in Guardians 1, the first time that we get an inkling there's more to Rocket is when he takes off his vest and Quill like sees his back and it has all those like little like noodly metallic cyborg bits on his back. And I think like, Rocket and Nebula had the same upbringing, you know, like you can really, you really get the idea that like them two being the two that weren't blipped and them two having that 5 years she's really been able to find people beyond Gamora. I mean, like growing up, she only had Gamora, and now she has all these Guardians who have all been through so much fucking shit. That's gotta like.
I also, think it was, and I was also thinking about the fact that Nebula and Rocket have been worked on, which we kind of have always known, just didn't know to the extent. But the fact that Nebula makes the decipher of when they're looking at what happened to him, and she's like, "This is worse than anything that was done to me." Like that was a very telling. It was like shit because we saw Thanos literally rip her apart when to torture Gamora into telling him where the stone was. So it's like if she's saying that, like that really just tells you how again sadistic the High Evolutionary is.
Yeah, and let's move on to our final character, the character of the movie, Rocket Raccoon,
who isn't in the movie all that much,
which is insane, right? Yeah. He's not. I was thinking this is probably Bradley Cooper didn't probably have to do as much voice acting as he has done in other ones.
Well, also because Sean Gunn did Baby Rocket, I think.
Oh, that's just nepotism.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he also did all the motion capture.
Yeah.
Oh shit!
I know he did the motion capture. I didn't know he was doing the voice act. I was trying to find who the voice actor was.
Yeah, I watched a featurette or something, and they were like, "Oh, finally, Sean also gets to do the voice of young Rocket." So it's like, "Oh, that's sweet."
Oh, I really thought they just upped the something on Bradley Cooper's voice to make it sound more like that. I have not. I've always liked Rocket, but I did not think I would ever emote so much over Rocket Raccoon. But from the opening, when we see fucking precious tiny baby Rocket, he was making me cry consistently. That fucking little raccoon, and God, there's so many moments, but the moment that sticks out to me the most is after his friends are dead, and he just scream cries over their bodies. That really hurt my feelings.
I feel like I didn't realize how much I liked Rocket until when Adam shows up in the beginning and starts annihilating Nowhere. When Rocket gets hit and then they go to put the med pack on him and he starts seizing and they're like, get it off, get it off, get it off. I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, get the fucking thing off of him right now. Oh my God. And that was the moment I was like, oh, I guess I really, really care about him.
Who knew? Yeah. His story was so well told. Brett, give me your Rocket rant.
No, I mean, it really does tie together the entire trilogy in a way. I mean, James Gunn has said that in interviews, you thought this was a trilogy about Star-Lord, but it was really about Rocket all along. And it does, that was the gamble. In 2014, 2013, when they announced this was happening, Marvel fans were like, you're making a movie about a raccoon and a talking tree. Okay, cool.
Right.
And the fact that, James Gunn did it, that he put Rocket in there, made him work, made him a fan favorite, and then, got to pay it off like this on this level and telling that story and it actually living up to the, I don't know, reverse hype. What's hype when it's a bad thing? I just think that's super, super great. Every time that Rocket was singing along to songs, which he sings "This Is the Day" is the first song that comes up after he's not resurrected, after he's back on his feet, and him just singing along, and I'm like, me and Rocket both know the words to this song. It was very, very sweet, and I'm so glad that he's now the leader of the Guardians. That's such a good.
Him and Nebula getting leadership positions at the end felt so fucking earned, right? Ashley, what'd you think of Rocket in this?
I think they have to come up with a special award to give Bradley Cooper. He stole every scene without ever having to show up on set. He doesn't even show up to the press events. He
finally did these. He did do
okay, they were able to get him to leave the house. That was nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Because for real, I mean, it's an amazing gig. You are part of some of the most highest grossing movies of all time, and you just send your voice notes over and go back to sleep. That's a real, but no, right. I mean, he carried the movie without having to be, in it. I mean, on some level, of course, it's also our emotional connection to Rocket as a character. But yeah, I mean, knowing Sean, I don't know how I feel. Okay, anyways, but still, I give it to I give it to Bradley personally.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, I think it was. I mean, Rocket, from my consensus, has always been the fan favorite of the Guardians. So letting him be even though he was in it, ironically, for such a short time, he was the star player of it all.
Yeah.
And so allowing that for the last goodbye, I think also, I know we said Mantis was the heart, but it's very clear here that Rocket was the glue.
Yeah.
And so having him be the person, that, I mean, they would have done it for anyone on the team, but like, you can tell the stakes here were so different than, than everything else. And so like that just being such a driving point for them to have to, quite frankly, risk their lives every second of the movie. And then us getting this very traumatic it was so many emotions. One minute we're in the present and we're being traumatized, then we go back in the past and we know this shit does not end well for them. Like we are, and yet we just like, we're still in the dark of how bad it's going to be. But I think, and I guess I've mostly have spoken already about this and how, like, I'm just a really big fan of how they were able to show us how he got all of his traits without having to treat us like we're dumb and just making it part of the story and not like physically guide us to it. I'm a really big fan of that storytelling. I have to, again, give it to James Gunn because I know he worked on the script personally. It does make me a little excited for DC here, even though I feel like we might be 10 years too late, but still.
Same, Ashley, yes.
Trying to have some belief. I do believe if anyone could do it, it's him, but it's very, very much late. I'm sorry. They did get the bright idea to finally get someone with some vision when people might be slightly tired of superhero stories. But yeah, no, it was, I mean, like, and I have to agree with you in terms of I didn't realize how much I liked Rocket. Like I knew I was a fan of him. But at the same time, I wouldn't say there's anyone in the Guardians I don't care for.
Yeah.
But it did wake me up to the fact of like, I think maybe on some level as well, it makes you more of a fan just seeing his traumatic story side by side with what's happening. Cause it's like, my worst fear was that they get him back alive and that he wakes up and most, if not all of them, but half of them were dead. I was like, fuck.
Right.
But yeah, no, I'm sorry. I think Bradley Cooper just deserves so much more respect as a voice actor, or maybe I should have been paying more attention. Maybe he was already getting that respect and I wasn't paying attention, but like my man's really did a phenomenal job here. I'm happy he went out and actually got his accolades for once.
Because I'm like, I've never seen footage of him doing the Rocket voice, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, but I know it's him. I've known it's him because of the like the Rocket thing. Like I know, like we knew it was him from the very first trailer when they basically give Rocket those two lines, and it's like I think I watched too much The Hangover when I was growing up, and so unfortunately that's why I know his voice anywhere. But he is making his voice deeper than it is and more like huskier than and so also my theory is he doesn't show up to the press events because him and Zoe Saldana used to date, but I'm not I'm like, you're in a movie with your ex and you don't want to show up. No, I don't know. This also kind of makes me feel like they need to have an Oscar for voice acting. I'm not saying he should be like, I know they have one for like they don't have one, right?
No, they should.
So yeah. Now I'm gonna have to campaign on his behalf.
Do it. He needs an award, and then we need to give Brad Dourif an award.
Yeah,
100%. One of the things that I really, really liked about this is Ashley, kind of to what you were saying about them not dumb, like treating the audience like they're dumb with the way that they told his backstory. I like that because something that in my head, as I've been watching all of these films, is he has this personality of being mean and kind of being an asshole to everybody. But I don't remember if it's the first one or the second one, but Yondu says to him, like, I know that you play like you're the meanest and the hardest, but actually you're the most scared of all. And it's always stuck out to me. I'm like, if he's such an asshole to everybody, what exactly is it about his backstory that causes him to be so protective of Groot? And I feel like now we've finally filled in the gaps because he's known Groot since he's a baby. So it's his way of being able to protect something when he wasn't able to protect everybody else. And I just loved the way that it all just clicked and made sense with the way that they sprinkled the backstory throughout this film.
Yeah. Also, if you go back and you now look at Rocket scenes from throughout everything, the Guardians movies, even the Avengers movies that he's in, and you listen to him, And you know, there's so many times we think he's talking about the Guardians, and on some level he might be, but now it's a little bit more, it's sadder because he very much is probably more so talking about his first family.
Yeah.
Like when
Right.
when he, because when in Endgame he's on the mission with Thor to get the stone from Asgard.
Yeah.
And Thor's having a panic attack because he's lost so many people. And you start to, and you know, you might even get a little frustrated with Rocket because he's being so mean to him. And Rocket's response is like, we've all lost people, and this is basically our chance to make sure we don't lose, you know,
Yeah.
our other
Ugh.
people permanently. And now you really understand it.
Right.
Like, he wasn't talking about the Guardians. He doesn't really consider them gone yet because he still has a chance to get them back. Whereas he's never seeing his other family again. So now you kind of understand that motivation a little bit more because he's trying desperately to not have to be in the same situation he was. So like, when you are emotionally capable and able to handle it, you might be seeing some of his scenes in a different light.
Yeah.
Because I think in a lot of stuff he wasn't talking about the Guardians. He didn't consider them to be gone yet.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. Oof. So is there anything else before we do our closing? I feel like this was I really enjoyed this discussion. I've been dying to fucking talk about this movie. Is there anything else any of you want?
Mid-credit scene, I do. So like, you know, this is supposed to be the final Guardians movie. That's what it was all. And then in the mid and post credits, it's like, no, like there's a new Guardians lineup, and also the legendary Star-Lord will return. So like, okay, well, but I do think so. Like I wrote about this on an article at work, and you know, we meet this new Guardians lineup in the mid credits, and it's, you know, Rocket, Groot, Kraglin, and then Adam Warlock, Cosmo, and then a little girl named Phyla, which is very exciting to me. Phyla
Yes.
Vel, daughter, well, genetic weird clone daughter thing of Captain Marvel of Annette Bening, I guess. I don't. That's the weird.
Yeah.
But so like, and we see them like doing their mission, and so I don't know. Like my bet, if I was to place money, is like I am assuming that they're setting them up. I could see them being the supporting cast of like the Nova special presentation they're working on. Because if you look at that cast, they can't build a movie around that cast because there are no name actors. Like no character in that sextet is, you know, a lead singer. They're all a backing band. But I do think that, like, you know, you cast a hot actor as Nova, and then you make them the supporting crew, and then you have a new Guardians lineup. So, I mean, that could happen. Because, I mean, I don't know why you would introduce us to a new lineup and then not use it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I liked that team. I liked doesn't Cosmo, is it Cosmo that gets the like on your left?
Oh, I don't
like
remember.
Reference? One of them says that. And I gotta say that Star-Lord, I cried when he hugged his grandpa.
Oh yeah,
I did. I was like, ugh. I cried so much. I really felt like dehydrated after this movie. When the credits rolled, so I saw it with my former Barnes & Noble coworkers, who I always see the Marvel movies with. My former manager, Chris, as soon as the credits rolled, turned to me and said, "Are you okay?" Because I cried so much.
I don't. So then, like, if we get a legendary Star-Lord movie, which I mean, I guess we are, because that's why they put that there, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know what the Guardians franchise looks like without James Gunn writing and directing it. I do think like a movie that is like Chris Pratt in St. Charles, Missouri as Star-Lord, like, I don't know, dealing with like local drug dealers or something.
Right.
It'd be pretty funny. Like, I'm the legendary Star-Lord. I saved the galaxy twice, almost destroyed it once, but I can take on all of you meth dealers. I think it'd be fun.
Well, I felt like it was more so like he's gonna probably be in something attached to other people, but like they still have him playing.
Yeah.
Because like, isn't he? I mean, I know he's technically not half Celestial anymore, but he still has like a connection to that, and we now have the Eternals.
Oh yeah,
so,
that was the big thing after Shang-Chi. The post credits was like, these weapons are, you know, super old or
so I don't know if there's some connection there, even if he doesn't have his powers anymore. If there's something in terms of his.
Okay, the one question I have for all of you though is I forgot to bring this up when talking about Star-Lord. Wouldn't his family know he's alive? Because I feel like from what we've seen of the shows, everyone seems to know everything that happened at the end of Endgame, which is fine. I'm fine with that because the news outlets would report on it. I'm sure there would be 100 nonfiction books of like eyewitness accounts of like someone who saw someone who saw something. Yeah, Ant-Man has a full book. Wouldn't they know who isn't like? Wouldn't all of them be like people know who every hero was who was at
Well,
that
I think
battle?
it would be in character and on game for Star-Lord because he's like, I'm the legendary Star-Lord. I'm big. It's
Right.
like, no, there were like ask Ant-Man. It's like, oh, I don't know. There were like 50 heroes there. Star-Lord, sure. It's like just no
True.
one remembered to report on him. I can see that happen.
Yeah. Also, to be fair, because he recognized him so easily.
That's true.
As someone who grew up, he doesn't look the way he did when he was a kid. So it's possible he did know he was out there, but what is he really supposed to do? It's like if your grandson doesn't want to come back and would rather be in space.
True.
You kind of
That's what I was thinking.
with the fact that he's never coming back to see me. And instead you see him in the doorway. So it's like, I feel like the fact that he, picked up on him so easily might be that he knew that was his son, but it was just really nothing that he can do. He can't exactly call him in space. So yeah, I just kind of felt like he knew his grandson. I mean, that's also even going off of Mantis's point of your grandfather's down there and, you abandoned him the way you feel
Right.
abandoned by everyone else. So it's completely, it might even be that Mantis kind of knew your grandfather knows that
That's
know
true.
that you're still out here and feels lonely and can't get to you. So
That's true.
I'm going to go with the fact he knows.
I feel like he knew. Especially because he was like reading the newspaper about the whole Kevin Bacon abduction
that's true,
thing.
yeah.
I feel like it was more like he knew that he was out there. It's just he never knew if he was going to actually see him again.
True. Like Grandpa isn't getting to space.
Right. Because I was like, we scanned past the pictures of him as a kid and he does not look like the same person. So there had to be something like to clue him in that he was out there, that he was alive, because he immediately just recognizes him.
That's true. All right. So favorite scene now that we're at the end, favorite scene, Ashley?
Oh God, I really don't know.
I know, I don't know either. I don't know.
Yeah, I really fucking don't know. Since we didn't really talk about it too much, I'll say Rocket, when he tells them we have to save them and they're like, oh, the kids are there. It's like, no, we have to save all of them. And they have to start carrying these.
Oh my God, I love that scene. It's like silly, but very sweet, right?
Them like the mission statement.
Yeah, and also just as kind of intertwined is him realizing he is very much a raccoon and calling himself Rocket Raccoon for the first time. It did very much feel very Avengers Assemble to me. It's like that line we've been waiting for 10 years. And so his understanding of the fact that he's actually an animal. And like I said, James Gunn has done more for animal rights than PETA because the end message there is, they are living beings too. We have to get them off the ship or else they're going to die. And I'm your best friend and I'm a raccoon. So if you love me, then you have to have respect for these animals too. I'm like, that's...
Yeah, you're right.
Several points, little one.
Nick?
I'm torn between 3 of them. So fair. I love it's like super fast. Whatever the little I think it was called a blurp. The little animal that Adam Warlock had. I almost started crying when he peed because he was so scared. That was a standout to me. I loved the scene with Gamora and Peter when they're on the one planet and he's trying to be suave with the alien girl and Gamora is just being abrasive, and they keep going back and forth on whether or not she's actually falling for Peter's charm. Yeah. And then they make you think no, he's just going to be wholesome and that's what's going to change her mind. And then he just becomes Peter right at the end. He's like, oh no, I'm just fucking with you. Yeah. I was never actually going to do that. That, and then the third one, I loved Nathan Fillion, how the little gag of oh yeah, we have a dumb one too. Yeah. They would just pan back to whoever that was.
Also, it's so weird that Nathan Fillion he's been in all 3 Guardians playing a different character, which is so weird.
As soon as he appeared on screen, because I didn't see his name in the credits, but as soon as he appeared on screen, I was like, Caleb!
Yeah, I was like, wait, he's I was like, in my brain, I was like, who is he playing? Is this a character I should know? But it's just a random guard, right, Brett?
Yeah.
Who was Michael Rosenbaum playing?
Oh, he's Martinex, the prismy guy.
The diamond-looking guy on the Ravagers. Who has 4 parts. Gotcha. Yeah, it's so weird.
Also, Miley Cyrus voices Mainframe in Volume 2, but she did not come back to say her one line of dialogue for 3. So,
but it was Tara Strong, who is a very famous voice actor, who did she do Batgirl or did she do Harley Quinn in the animated? I think she did Batgirl in the animated series. I will say the only name that stuck out to me when I saw Linda Cardellini's name in the credits, I was like, oh, they're going to go to Earth and see Hawkeye and his wife? Like, that was what I thought when I saw her name. And I was like, but Jeremy Renner's not in the credits. That's weird. Is it just his wife? Is like, they go to see him to get help and he's not home. So they talk to his wife, but then now her and Judy Greer are in that club of like, have played two different characters in the MCU because Judy Greer voiced the pig that Adam Warlock pulls the head off of.
War Pig, yeah.
Which is so weird. Brett, what's your favorite scene?
I mean, the Beastie Boys fight scene, obviously, but I also need to shout out, I mean, the entire heist on that organic, like, factory planet.
Yes.
Like, so watching that, I realized, like, oh, this is what they were trying to do in Quantumania, but this is good.
Yeah.
Like, with down to the organic controls that you just stick your hand in and you feel the goo and that does things. And I was like, oh yeah. But like that entire sequence, I was just like, I've never seen things on film that look like this. Like, this is so bizarre and just wonderful. And I think like after suffering through the green screen multiverse of madness that was Quantumania, it was nice seeing like actual, I don't know, artful and I don't know.
Right.
It did really feel like Marvel was saving their money to make this one.
Yes. I was just about to say that. It's weird that this movie has come out after like numerous bad movies that have not had great like CGI and sets, and like Ant-Man looked like one big green screen set, and this looked fantastic.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't a moment that I was like, that looked bad.
Yeah.
Which was surprising considering, especially considering the previous movie was Quantumania, which maybe looked the worst. I think for me, it was the musical cues that really worked. This is going to sound weird. I think my favorite scene was the opening when Creep is playing, because like, it was just so fucking beautiful, and like, watching them go through their mundane everyday lives. Like, I always want to see that. And I just loved seeing it while this like way more emotional version of Radiohead's Creep is playing because it's acoustic, but also when In the Meantime is playing and they're doing the space jump, which I read is a reference to 2001 Space Odyssey, the slow motion, I love that song so much that like, that scene made me cry because it was beautiful. And like, there wasn't anything sad happening. I just thought it was like really great.
Yeah.
And I liked that. The thing that they do well is like, then Peter turns off the music. Like, I really like that they can have that device of like, yeah, that's what he's listening to. That's why we're hearing it. And he's, turning it off right now. And I thought Zoe Saldana did some really good acting in that scene when she's like answering him, but annoyed at him, but not really looking at him, and like looking over to answer, but like, she's not playing it up, but you can tell that she's like, shut the fuck up. And I really like that. But then also the Beastie Boys scene, hallway fight scene. So good. Yeah. Well, we're all probably going to agree, I think, which doesn't happen that often. Hasn't happened on a Marvel movie in a while. What grade do we give this movie? Nick, you first.
This one is going to be A- for me.
Okay. Ashley?
I'll give it an A. My only real harsh critique would probably be on Adam Warlock, and I don't think that's fair to hold against it. I think that's a wider MCU issue. So yeah, I'll give it an
A. Brett?
Yeah, A.
Yeah.
A plus to the entire Guardians franchise.
Yes. I love the franchise, but I think this is my favorite one. Like I have loved the franchise, but I think this is the one that made me cry.
Agreed.
So cried numerous times, not cried once. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you all for listening. I was so excited to talk this movie, and now this has been one of the longest recordings we've done in a while. I apologize to all of you that had sit here for 2 hours with me. But if you like Slayerfest 98, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. I'm going to be doing some more videos over there, and some more live streams. If you want to support us, you can find us on Patreon. I'm going to be revamping our Patreon coming in June, so there may be different benefits, but we have a Discord, we have bonus episodes, we have monthly Zoom calls, monthly Zoom watch-alongs, and if you want to follow us on social, we are at SlayerFestX98 on all social media platforms. If you want to follow me, I am at ENXCarlos. Nick, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on socials at Nicksaysboo, or you can find me on YouTube. I have a reaction channel, mostly horror movies, but occasionally other stuff too, which is also Nicksaysboo.
And Ashley, where can everyone find you?
Ashley K. Smalls everywhere, basically not that active because I'm working my dissertation, but at some point I'll post again. So that's where you can find me.
Brett?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Brett White. You can read sporadic coverage of Marvel stuff at on Decider, and you can follow at Barb Hardley to see my burgeoning drag exploits. I mean, well, I'm at like 11 months now, so I guess I'm not burgeoning anymore. I might be a professional queen.
You are. I'm
Sure,
gonna
I'll
say
take it.
professional. All right, everyone. Well, we will see you next time. Bye.